All right, I want to welcome you all in. We are going to give just a minute or two for everybody to log in and get their audio situated. While we're getting everybody into the room, if you would go ahead and drop in the chat who you're with or your role and what you hope to learn from today's session. This just helps make sure that we cover the things that are important to you. And a couple more coming in. All right, I am going to turn it over to our first speaker, Leslie, and then after Leslie goes, Denise is going to introduce herself. My name is Nisi and I'm with AJB Consulting, and we are excited to continue to bring this series to you guys. If you have any questions, I'll be working the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of get off camera and let these two lovely ladies lead us into all things grants. Leslie?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you. Well, it might be, if you're on the East Coast, it might be afternoon, but it is my pleasure to be here with my colleague Denise to talk about grants. Denise is going to lead this call. Sometimes people wonder, like, why do I get to, why should I listen to what you have to say? Well, my claim to fame is I've had, I think, every job there is to have in a nonprofit organization. From being the board chair, the treasurer, the philanthropy chair, the whatever, to being the CEO, executive director, program director, operations director, chief development officer, all that. So there's plus the person that washes the dishes and takes out the trash. So as you know, we all wear a lot of hats, but I've had those roles, so I understand the seat you're in. Even if I haven't had your seat, maybe I've worked with you as a colleague, or maybe you've reported to me. So we're happy to help, and we're happy to answer questions. And Nisi will give us that information when we're finished on how you can be in touch with us. But now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Denise Bennett.
And thank you all for coming. I'm happy to be with you today and to talk a little bit about specifically fundraising and grants and what role they play in your organization or the organization you're anticipating opening. I really consider myself to be less of an expert than my colleague Leslie. I have not been a CEO, but I have sat in the C-suite in fundraising and development, and have worked in a variety of nonprofits throughout not only South Texas, but also in the Chicago area. My background is in banking and then in consulting for an organization in Chicago that was in clients included State Farm Insurance and McDonald's, and I was really doing a lot of technical writing for them. So transitioning to grant writing was a lot of fun. I like words, and I'm happy to share my knowledge with you today. And that might be for you a lot, or it might be for you a little. But either way, I'm happy to share it. So today's topic is about all things related to grants. And the first thing I want to talk about is, are you ready for a grant? It's not just about asking a trust or a foundation or a corporation to sponsor the great work that you're doing. There is really a lot more behind the scene that has to happen in order to make you grant ready. And I really encourage you, after the seminar is over today, to reach out to us, to MLP Consulting Group. Inisi is going to put that in the chat about how to get our grant application readiness checklist. It's a free document for you, and it really provides you with a one-page outline of the things you may have to have lined up. In most instances, a large foundation is going to require perhaps all of these things, but others might just need some of them. And this list is, I'm not going to say it's all inclusive, but as I've been writing for the last 13 or so years, these are the things that repeatedly come up in the grant application process. So once you have that grant application readiness checklist, then you can really start digging down into what things make you eligible for a grant. So the first thing on that list is to determine what that foundation is actually looking for. And in order to be a match for that, you really have to be clear about what your mission and goals are. So you need to really be able to speak in the fewest words possible. In most instances, a grant application is looking for a mission that is no more than 30 words. You're lucky if you'll get 2 sentences to clearly state your mission. So you need to have a real concise, clearly articulated mission statement. And then you need to have goals that you are trying to move the needle. How are you going to move the needle when it comes to your particular mission? And incorporated then in that becomes your vision statement, which is really your plan for how you're going to make a difference in the community in whatever way you're set out to make a difference. If you want to progress to the next one, the next thing you really need to be aware of is that funders are looking for structure and for capacity. So do you have the resources and infrastructure in place to bylaws, a board of directors that's not your family members? Do you have all of these things that are in place? And I kind of go through this on the grant readiness checklist that state to a funder, I have the capacity and the structure in place to move forward with this application. Some funders will be asking you for that information specifically. Others will just be asking if you have it and that you can produce it in the event that they do ask for you to provide that. And then it comes down to whether or not you have a staff, what level of competency do they have, how long they have been with the organization, are there dual controls in place to make sure that the organization is grant ready and reputable in the community. So then you might say, why are they looking for financial stability? If I had financial stability, I wouldn't be looking for a grant. But the reality is that they want to know that they're providing and really protecting their asset by providing their financial support to an organization that's going to do the right thing and what they said they were going to do to the best of their ability. There are things that you can't control ultimately, but they're looking for somebody who has a financial history. That means that you need to be able to provide them with your 990s if you're required to file 990s, or it might be financial statements like a balance sheet, or your financial budget to actuals. They will provide you with the information they need, and then it's your responsibility to submit that to them so that they get to determine whether or not they believe you're financially able to move forward with the grant, and looking back that you have managed your assets in a sustainable way and in an honest way. So I'll be honest with you, this is probably the biggest mistake that nonprofits make, and that is that they look at grant finding funders is kind of a dating relationship. So everybody's familiar with online dating now, and you either swipe to the left or swipe to the right. And that's kind of how a lot of nonprofits approach grant writing. They take a look through there are a variety of websites that provide grant opportunities, and they give you a statement about the organization and who they funded. And you can even have done some research about taking a look at that foundation's 990 to know who they've supported. Is it in your area? Is it in your state? Are they like sort of like nonprofits, doing the similar things to you that fits within their parameters of how they're going to make their distributions? But the thing that most development departments don't do is they don't pick up the phone, make an appointment to have a conversation with the person who's running that foundation or that trust, and talk with them in person over coffee, build a relationship, and learn more about what that organization is interested in investing in, and get to know the person who's behind the desk. That's the biggest mistake I see with most nonprofits, is that they think that they're just gonna take a dart and throw it at the bullseye, and if it lands, it lands, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And they write 10 grants to get one, just hoping that something will stick. And I really see this as the biggest mistake that nonprofits make. So pick up the phone, call the funder, find out what's going on with them before you start moving forward. Once you've done all of that, and once you've talked with maybe other nonprofits in your community to find out what they're doing, is there some way you can partner with them? Because most foundations and corporations and trusts are looking for people who are collaborating with other community members and other nonprofits. And once you've kind of crossed those hurdles, then it comes down to, okay, it's time for me to write this grant. So how can I make my grant a compelling one? In many instances, there's a local foundation here that receives as many as 125 to 150 applications for the $5 million that they're going to put out into the community. So they're really looking for something to stand out in that pile of 150 applicants. So how can you make that happen? How can you stick out from the crowd? That's what we're going to talk about next. And this is the key. You have to write a clear description of the project you're asking them for funding. So think of this in terms of your niece or your nephew or your brother or your child comes to you and says, hey, I need to borrow $500. What's the first thing that you're going to ask them? What do you need $500 for? And you're going to ask for clear definition of why they're requesting money from you. This is what the funder is doing. They want to understand clearly what you're trying to accomplish, how you intend to accomplish it, how you intend to measure what you're planning to accomplish, how that, is there a need for that in the community? How does what you're proposing make an impact in the community? And do you have the capacity to actually make that happen? So the first step is defining that clear project of what you are planning to accomplish, and then making sure that your plan and your proposal aligns with the funders. So if the funder says that they're interested in addressing health, and they are clear that they are addressing the health of a certain population in your community that doesn't include pets, then you want to make sure that you're not writing a grant that's about funding Fido's vet appointment. So you really have to align yourself with the mission and the funding guidelines that the funder is putting out there as their priority. So I talked a little bit about demonstrating need. So that means you can't just say, I know that the community is in need of mental health services based on, I heard that people aren't able to get appointments with therapists. Instead, you have to use the data, do the research, find the statistics that are a clear indicator that mental health programs are not available in your community, the impact that's having on the population you intend to serve, and you must use data and statistics to support those claims that you're making. And if you can highlight or insert a document, lead them to a document or a research, then you include that in your proposal as well. So you can narrow down the data that you are going to provide, because honestly, most applications are very narrow in what they want you to communicate to them, based on the fact, as I mentioned before, that they might be reviewing 150 applications. And if they give you the opportunity to give them 10 pages worth of blah, 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 however important that is to you, they don't have the time to be able to go through all of those applications. So you provide a little bit of the statistics and data, provide a testimonial from somebody who's been the beneficiary of the program that you're trying to fund, and then provide them with links to the fuller context within the document. Leslie, do you want to say anything about data? Because, you know, a lot of people, I feel like this is where they screw up, basically, that they just think there's a need, and I can see the need, and I saw the need yesterday, and I talked to this person who told me they need this, but they don't really go and use the data involved that will get them funded.
100%. I'm happy to add into that. Some people think data has to be your data within. If you're starting out, you don't have data within. You don't have anything that says, I've served this many people and these are the outcomes, because there's outputs and outcomes. But if you're just starting, or even if you've been at it for a while, you may not have clear data yet. But if there really is an issue, there is data out there describing the issue you're seeking to solve, or at least have an influence in. So it is important for you to research the topic which you are intending or already are working in. So if it's you want to help homeless veterans, well, know how many homeless veterans there are, know how it is impacting your community, know how your community relates to other communities of like size across the country, know what the problem is nationwide. Give them the picture. You want to paint a picture with your data of what the challenge is, and what are the best practices for solutions. But it is worth you doing the research. And some people say to me, who has time for that? I get it. You don't, but you don't have time to not do it, because if you don't give the funder the full picture, you're not going to get funded. The other thing is we do a lot of research with our interns. So if you are looking to find someone to help you with this, get an intern. That's a little bit of a segue. We're not here to talk about interns, but I also find that it's a good opportunity for interns to do research. Then they start to see what the challenges are. So yes, I concur with Denise completely in that it is crucially vital for you to have the data. No, it's important for you, but it's important for the donor, the grant maker as well. And it is, it does not have to be your own data. It does not have to be something that your organization has created so far. Once you get to a tipping point where you have decent data, then yes, I'm going to encourage you to include your own data, but that does not mean you delete the other data. You still need to set the stage with the big picture challenge. Here's how many there are, how does this compare to other cities in the country, or whatever your topic is.
Thanks for bringing that up, Leslie, because that is an important piece. It's building the picture from 500 feet up, and then zoning down into how you in particular are going to impact that data. And so that really has to do with organizational capacity too. And that's the next topic is, what is your experience as a team? What is your experience? Can you identify the population that you serve? And you need to be really specific about that. They want to know who your population is. What do they look like demographically, behaviorally? They want to get a picture of who you're trying to serve and how your experience and your staff and your partnerships in the community are going to move that population further down the line to the goals that you're trying to accomplish. So that all happens with clear and convincing and concise language. So not everybody's a writer, right? So if you're not a writer, it means that you need to just sit down, take a look at the application and the questions that are being asked of you, start kind of bullet pointing what you're trying to communicate. Back in the day, this would have been creating an outline, right? You're going to take a look at those questions and get the expert, your program team, if you're the expert, but you're going to sit down and make bullet points to each one of those questions. And then later, you either turn that information over to somebody who can write the grant for you and who is able to clearly communicate your organization's mission. Or if you're early on in this process and you don't have the funding to hire a professional, then you need to sit down and start putting this into paragraphs, making sure that when you finally think that you've crafted a good story, a persuasive story, that you have somebody or several somebodies outside of your organization who has no idea what you do, read through the document that you've created to see if at the end of reading your document, they know what you do, who you're going to do it for, how you're going to accomplish it, how you're going to measure your progress, and what impact that's going to have on the community, and why the funder should invest in your mission. Have somebody outside of your organization take a look at that, because you would not believe how many times I read through grants that people have written, and it is as clear as day to them what they're saying and what they do. And as a person who's completely unaware of what their work is, I have no idea the answer to any of those questions. So you really need to stand out in all of these applications by being clear and concise and having done your homework in having a third party, a non-involved third party, read through your application and then afterwards say, can you tell me what I'm asking for? And can you tell me how we're going to demonstrate the capacity and demonstrate that we've met the objectives and goals of our mission? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? And if they say no, then it's time to go back to the drawing board, or find somebody to help you to really craft and create that document. And that goes to this. You might think that this sounds like a huge investment of time, and it is. However, once you have created a database of your narratives based on if you have multiple programs or if you only have one mission, you create a folder that has your stock language that you've developed so that when you're filling out a grant application, you can say, oh, I've answered this question before. Let me go and pull that resource material that I've already created and streamline it or tailor it to this particular funder. But it's worth making the investment up front. So for new nonprofits or small nonprofits or for nonprofits who have a really tight budget, my recommendation is find a professional to write your first couple of grants. And then you've developed some stock language that you can then begin trying to write them on your own and customizing it for each particular funder. Anything you want to say about that, Leslie? I see you nodding your head.
Oh, I am. That's a great opportunity. And even if you don't have the money up front to find a professional to do it, you probably have a friend that's a good writer. Have them look at it for you. Even if they know what you do. Denise is right. Have someone that has no idea what you do look at it, because they need to look at it like through the eyes of a funder that probably doesn't know anything about you. The other thing I want to underscore, though, is when Denise has used the word concise a lot, and I cannot tell you how important that is. We, as nonprofit professionals, are proud of the work we do, and we have this tendency to want to tell everyone every single thing we do and all the reasons why we did it and how we started it and what our origin story is. And yeah, most funders don't care. That is not answer the question they're asking. Don't get into all of the minutia of the why and the why of the mission is important, but why did you do it? When's it doesn't matter. You've got to stay within the parameters of the questions they're asking. So be really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? I have a lot of self-control when you're writing these proposals, because the tendency is to tell every bit of information you have, and you've really got to be, to use Denise's word, concise, and you have to be pinpointed to the question.
So, I do say concise a lot, and the one thing that I have learned is if I'm writing for a new agency, for instance, someone that I haven't written for before, and I sit down with the CEO or the program person and I gather all of the information, I come back to my workspace and I don't do that. I just put it all out there on paper, knowing that those 5,000 characters are ultimately going to have to turn into 1,000 characters. But it's like a cleansing process. Okay, I got that out of my system. So now I can go back to, what do I clearly need to communicate here? Am I answering their question? I cannot tell you how many times I review somebody's grant application and they didn't really answer the question. And so you have to make sure you understand the question that's being asked of you. And some funders are way more detailed and precise than others. And then make sure that you go back a couple days later, and this goes to timeline. Don't wait till the last minute to do a grant. You go back a couple of days later and review what you previously wrote. Totally do not hit the send button or the submit button when you've just completed the application. You wait, you go back and read through it before you ever hit the submit button. But because you're going to be judged on the first two sentences of anything that you write. So for every question, if they're allowing you to write a paragraph, I'm guaranteeing you that they're going to decide whether to read the remainder of that paragraph based on the first sentence. So you put all of the great stuff up in that first sentence. It's like when you go to the bookstore and you buy a book, when you're looking for a new book and you're not familiar with a particular author, you might open the book, read the synopsis on the sleeve, and then if you're like me, you turn to chapter 1 and I read the first sentence. And I can determine from the first sentence of a book whether or not that author is going to engage me. And that's really the approach that you need to take with a grant application. If you have a demonstrated track record, if you have relationships with other partners in your community that do similar work or complementary work to what you're doing, you want to bring that up in your application, because that shows the funder that you're connected to the community and that you know what you're doing and that you're engaging the community. You're talking about volunteer relationships that you have, or people who sit on your board and what they're capable of and what they're doing. So you really want to take all of those things into consideration. And this is a great synopsis of that, about compelling storytelling. And we can all attest to the fact that we've read some boring stuff out there, and you don't want to fall in that category. You don't want to be in the discard pile just based on the fact that when the reader has completed the first mission statement and your vision and maybe your executive summary, that they've already made a decision without reading anything else. They may have already made a decision that this is not of interest to them, or you have typos or poor grammar. And don't kid yourself, these things do matter to funders, and they will reject your application in many instances just because they determined that somebody who wrote this and the form that it's in is not somebody that really took themselves seriously and took the mission seriously. So it does make a big difference.
I'll echo that also. I also read, I'm a reviewer for some grants, and grants are like a job applicant, right? And if you are hiring, you're looking for reasons to get through the first pile. And it is things like typos and grammar errors and spelling errors. And it's because if you're not putting your best foot forward, why is it that I should invest in your mission? So 100% those things matter. They're looking for reasons to put you into the no pile first. Then if you get past that first, then they're looking for, do they deserve to be considered, right? And it does matter. So again, have a friend that's a good writer, make a relationship with a local college or university, and have your grants be a English class project or something. I mean, there's always ways to get help. But having someone who is a good writer help you, even if you can't afford a grant writer. And I'll go back to Denise's point. I like the idea of writing down everything you know, but then how do you take all that information and streamline it to answer the grant question? Because everything you know is important. I didn't mean to insinuate that it wasn't, but for each grant, it's going to be different things that are important.
Right. And then I want to add on to what Leslie just said about pile number one. You don't want to end up in pile number one because it doesn't look like you cared. You want to end up at least in pile number two, which is say, we want to take a deeper look at this, and we want to see if they've communicated clearly, and did they listen to instructions? Did they provide us with all these other things that we asked for? And then finally, they're going to get to the pile, which is, how does this application stack up to everybody else's applications? And why should I select this application to fund versus somebody else's application? You want to make it to that third and final pile that ends up with a check attached. That's really the key here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So the answer is, you've taken a look at, hopefully you'll take a look at the grant application readiness checklist, and you will have worked your way down the checklist, checked it off. Do I have a 501c3 letter of determination? Because they're going to ask for that. Do I have it in a folder that I can readily access and upload to the application? Do I have a signed W-9? Do I have my financial statements ready? Do I have an audit if I'm required to have one? Make sure that your PDF falls within their parameters to size. That can happen sometimes. And so then you have to figure out a way to condense that PDF down. Do I have a budget for my entire agency and know the difference between an agency and a program? Because if you're asking for general operating funds, then they want your agency budget. But if you're asking for a specific program, they're going to want to know, this program costs $100,000. They're asking me for $30,000 of the $100,000. Who are they getting the other 70 from? Are they committed in their giving, Or are they just trying to secure the $100,000? And then if I do give them the $30,000, how are they going to spend that money? And do they have the capacity to track that afterwards so that I know how my money was spent? And that goes to the whole financial piece, which really honestly is a whole another conversation about whether or not you have an accounting person who knows how to manage the grant process once the money's been issued, especially if it's a federal funder. And then they want to know who your board of directors is, and do 100% of them give? They always want to see the number 100%. And they may even ask you what dollar amount, not specifically each board member gives, but what is the collective total of what your board gives to the organization on an annual basis. They may ask for an org chart for the program. If you're a small nonprofit, but you have multiple lanes, then you want to focus on one particular lane and say, I'm providing medical equipment, durable medical equipment. That's my broad mission to the community. But I serve veterans, I serve children, I serve disabled adults. So you might want to have a budget that's for each one of those lanes, so that when you're trying to match yourself to a funder, they only fund children with disabilities, that you have a budget that aligns within your umbrella budget that aligns with what their mission is, so that they know that the money's going directly to the population they choose to serve and want to serve. In rare cases, you'll have, if it's a government grant that you're going after, then they're going to want to know that you have a letter of insurability, or they want you to match the grant in some way. Your match can be labor, but they'll define those parameters for you and hire somebody. I highly suggest, unless you really know what you're doing, hire somebody to build a logic model for you for a particular program, so that when an agency asks you for a logic model, that you have a document already that you can drop in there that's a proven logic model for how your program meets the need and how it's measured and what the final outcomes are. If you have social media accounts, they may ask you for that information as well. So then not only do you want to make sure you have those handles for your social media accounts, but you want to make sure that your social media, as always, is a true and accurate reflection of the work that you're doing in the community, because they will go look. They wouldn't ask for them if they didn't plan on taking a look at them, because they may want to know whether or not they want their name associated with your social media platforms. So just take a look at that list, and when you finally say, yes, I've got a strong history, I feel like I'm good here, maybe I'm a little off here, so maybe I need some help here, but I think we can pull this off, then it's time to sit down and start writing and creating a portfolio of language that you can use, because every single grant that you write can become some of the language that you need for the next proposal. And then, you know what, Leslie, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the management of the grant after it's been awarded.
Yeah, I will.
That whole piece. You get the check, you deposit the check, it's not over then, because there's stewardship, there's all of that piece behind the scenes that must be done.
Nisi put a couple of things to my attention that I want to go over. So and I will, yes, Denise, I will talk about what happens once you are awarded, because that's the day you do the happy dance. It's very exciting, but it's also the day like the real work begins, right? So one of the things Nisi has brought up is, what about a 501c3 letter of determination? And I'll take that even a little bit broader, like what legal documents do you have to have? You have to be incorporated as a business. Remember, nonprofits are a business. Nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. If you know me for any length of time, you'll hear me say that over and over and over again. So you need to be incorporated in your state according to state law, and it's different state to state. But that's where you submit your articles of incorporation and bylaws and that kind of thing. And then the state will tell you, yep, you're now a business officially registered, and here you go. Then though, to get your nonprofit tax status, you have to file with the IRS, and you have to file a sort of laborious document. I should know the number off the top of my head, but it's an IRS document. If you give me a minute, I'll think of it, 24 something. And it's not easy. There's a lot of questions on there, and you've got to be able to answer them to the best of your ability. Again, if you can have some professional help doing this, a lawyer to look at it before you submit it, not a bad idea. All lawyers are not well-versed in nonprofit tax law, but it's better than nobody. If you know someone that's well-versed in nonprofit tax law, all the better. So make sure you, before you file for a grant though, you must have your 501c3 letter of determination. And I will say there are some slight variables, like if you are a political organization, it could be a C4, but the tax deductibility changes with each variable on that. But a C3 is a tax deductible nonprofit organization. So if people make a gift to you. The other is 990s, most recent and previous. 990 is your tax form. When you hear you're a nonprofit, you're tax exempt, what does that mean? It means you don't have to pay taxes on your revenue, but you still have to file a tax return, and it's a 990, where you as a 1040, you is what you do as a, is that right? I don't even know what the number is that individuals file, but you file a form 990 as a nonprofit, and you can, oh, and by the way, you can show a revenue surplus. That is a nonprofit term for profit. So you can end the year with more revenue than expenses. You want to do that. You want to plan to do that. But your 990 is you saying to the IRS, this is what I took in. This is what I spent it on, my programming. This is the board who manages and is responsible, has the fiduciary responsibility for this organization. And here's the outcome, and not clinical outcomes, but here's the financial balances. Make sure that you have signed W-9s from everyone you need them from, if you have contractors or whomever, because you have to still provide all that information. You still have to pay payroll taxes if you have an employee. You still, all those things matter. And though we're getting into the weeds off some of the grant topics, but the 990s and 501c3s are a must for grants. You have to have, now, if you're a startup, that's a different, you have to have your letter of determination, but you may not have a 990 if you're in the beginning, and that's okay. You can tell them that, and they understand that, but you're going to have to file something eventually. If you may only start out filing a 990 EZ, it may be very minimal in the beginning, but you need to have financial record. And if you're below $50,000, you don't have to file at all, but you still have to have financials. Yeah, so, okay, let's go on to the part of you get the award. You've written a brilliant proposal. You have wowed them with your perfection. And they say, yep, here's your $100,000. Go get them. Now what? Well, like you would with any donor, the minute you receive that award, thank them. That may be a call from you as the CEO. It may be, so that would be yes, that would be the first thing. Somebody calls them right away. You get a notice that's, it's an email probably that says, yes, we've awarded your grant. You pick up that phone and you call them as fast as your little fingers will dial the phone, and you say, thank you. We appreciate your investment in our work. This is an investment in you. This is not a handout. It's an investment. Then you do the other things. You send them a acknowledgement letter that has a tax acknowledgement on the bottom, and that's signed by the CEO or whomever. You could be the chief development officer, whatever your title is. And then if you as the CEO, if you're the CEO or the ED and you called them, maybe you have your board chair write a thank you note. And I mean a note card, and it should be branded with your materials on it, or somehow they know it's coming from you, not just a generic thank you note. Although if you don't have branded materials yet, a generic thank you note is fine. But you want them to know that it's from you. And have your board chair or you, depending on who's called. In other words, I'm trying to get you to have 3 different people touch them. Then keep the donor informed of the progress you're making. Sometimes it's formal. They ask you for a quarterly report or a biannual report or an annual report. All that matters. And you have to do it, and you have to do it in a timely fashion. If you don't do what the parameters of the gift require, the likelihood of you getting a second gift is slim and none. They won't even let you apply if you haven't fulfilled the previous grant's obligations. So don't burn that bridge before you've really fully gone over it. Do it. If it's a struggle, if it's something you don't know how to do, you can probably ask them for help, but you also can ask the same group of people that you asked to help you write the grant to help you write any reports that are due. But beyond reports, make sure you're staying in touch with them. Make sure they're on your newsletter list so that they're getting a communication from you. Make sure you're reaching out to you might have an account rep sort of thing, or maybe it's a smaller agency that's giving you the money and you're going right to the decision maker, whomever. Make sure that every once in a while you maybe send them a little video of something that they've funded, or maybe there's an article about you in the newspaper, your organization, or on television or online somewhere. Send them the clip, send them the copy. Stay in touch with them. They have made an investment in you. They want to know how you're doing. They don't want to be looked at as an ATM machine where you go, you take the money out, and you never talk to it again. They want to be your partner. So I'm not saying you have to talk to them every week. That's not it. But have a routine and put it on your calendar. Touch base with XYZ Foundation this week. Maybe it's once a quarter, maybe it's once a month. It depends on what your capacity is, but don't have it be 0. Make sure you're staying in touch with them frequently or with some routine. I will also say, but what you do for Organization A, Foundation A, you might be able to do for Corporation A and Individual A. So you can do the same information to them, but you just are making it personal. It's different than them just getting your newsletter. That's generic and they know everybody's getting it. This is from you as the CEO or the founder or the executive director or even the chief development officer. It doesn't so much matter who it's coming from. It's that it's personal. It's not this group. It's not out of your constant contact account. It's from your email. It's an acknowledgement of their investment, and it's showing their investment at work. I could go on that topic for about 1 million years. So I will stop though there. And chat question for Denise. What is a logic model, Denise? That's your question.
Yeah, I was just looking one up. You know what I will do? I will send, so basically a logic model, and everybody has a different formula, but basically a logic model is about what are your inputs into the problem, into the stated program goal. This is what I'm going to put in. This is what activities are involved in accomplishing those things. This is what the output is going to be. And so this relates to how many people, the size, the scope of the product or service. Then the next would be what the anticipated result will be. What will change as a result of my doing these activities? How will I know that they've changed are the indicators. And then usually the last box is what long-term change will result, a systems change will result as the result of my inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impact. That's what the logic model is. I'll say that again slowly. Inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes result in impact. And there are lots and lots of different models. If you Google,
I'm gonna give you a sample in about 2 minutes. Well,
Perfect.
less than that. I'm gonna put one in the Dropbox.
perfect.
So
And
just
if
let
you
me
Google
find
it, you will find a lot of different models for
Right.
that logic model, but basically that's what they include. So it's a graph, if you will. It's a snapshot of everything you wrote in those thousands and thousands of words.
I downloaded it. I just have to find it now. Here it is. Okay, I just dropped one in the chat. This is a decision logic model. It is not the decision logic model, but it is a good template for you to look at. But if you just Google logic models, they'll come up, and it is a very good tool to look at so that you're thinking logically through what you do. And I mentioned this earlier, and I'll say it again, understand there's a difference between outputs and outcomes. So an output is we served 6,000 meals. That's an output. An outcome is 300 families reduced their food insecurity and were fed routinely. Something that's not well spoken, but the outcome is food insecurity was improved in 300 families. The output is the action. The outcome is the result. I cannot tell you how many times I see people put outputs as outcomes. That 6,000 meals is not a result. Doesn't matter. It's what happened. How are you, go back to your mission, go back to your vision statement. How are you solving the problem? The action is feeding the people. The outcome is they have a reduced food insecurity.
I saw there was a question about expanding on grant readiness. So that's going to really be dependent on who you're trying to seek funding from, because every grantor has a specific criteria that they're looking for, including that there are funders out there who are willing to work with a startup. And so they know you don't have all of the things that are on that grant application readiness checklist that is being provided to you. But the key factor is to ask yourself as an agency, are you eligible for the funding that's available? That this grantor is looking to fund this type of project. Is that the mission that I serve? Don't start chasing dollars by changing your mission. So it's, are you eligible for the funding and meet the specific requirements of that particular funder? Do you have a clear vision and purpose? And can you state that clearly? Do you have a track record or any data that you can show that the need exists and that you have the capacity to meet that need? Are you in good standing in the community? Do you have adequate staff or resources to deliver what you're promising and to be able to track that you did it? And finally, I think it's that big question about, are your finances in order? And that has to do with many grantors wanting 2 to 3 years of financial experience and being able to show that you have the financial documents, the balance sheet and the I&O, inputs and output, the I&O, in order to be able to present that information that they ask for. And if it's a big, huge grant from a government agency, then they're going to want to know that you have enough money in the bank to be able to float the costs that you're going to inquire until they're able to reimburse you. Because many grants are like that, are cost reimbursement. So you put the money out there, and then at the 3-month mark, you submit your bill, and then they pay you based off of the invoice that you submitted. So I would say that's really what I'm talking about when I talk about grant readiness.
I also want to offer that if you go to our website, you'll see a little form at the bottom. You can fill that out and say to us, could we have a conversation? We'll be happy to talk to you for about 30 minutes for a free consultation. I see some of you are just starting up, and I would love to talk to you all if you're just starting up, because there's lots of things I want to make sure you know and you're doing right, that you're not just jumping into the deep end of the pool. There's also, I see some of you working in areas where there's already agencies doing this work. Now, maybe not in your city, and that's okay. So I'm not trying to tell you not to do something, but if it is, sometimes it's better for you to be a program under someone else's umbrella, or sometimes it's already happening, your program is happening elsewhere, and you could partner with them. There's ways for you just starting a new organization is not always the best answer. Sometimes it is, but you have to do your due diligence to understand the ecosystem first. So please feel free to go to our website. It's in the chat a bunch of times, and fill out the form, and we'll respond to you, and we can set up a time.
Or send us an email if you, once you get the grant application readiness checklist, if you have questions. I noticed somebody said something about, can you tell me more about creating an outline that you can use from grant to grant to grant? I'm happy to share more about that. I know that we're out of time, but if you send us an email, we'll be happy to kind of give you the parameters. And that's about learning the questions that 90% of grants ask, and then building the answers to those questions that you see repeatedly from application to application, so that when it comes time to submit that grant, you have a folder that contains the answers to those different questions. There you go.
Great. Oh, there's one new message in there. Yeah, okay, those are our email addresses, and then you're very welcome. Our web address is mlpconsultinggroup.com. So you can go to our website and fill in it. Huge thanks. You're very, very welcome. Reach out to us. We'll get you the checklist. We can get you a nonprofit checklist. There's lots of things that we can offer you, even if it's just a brief conversation to tell you you're on the right path and keep going, or offer a quick tweak. We want to see you be successful.
Right. Thank you, Nisi, for organizing this.
Yes, thanks, Nisi.
My sister from another mister.
That's right, the Bennett sisters.
You're
That's
more
right.
than welcome, more than welcome. Thank you all for signing up. Thank you so much to Denise and Leslie for allowing me to kind of snatch up your expertise and pull you into any of the good trouble that I try to get into. Please reach out to them. These ladies are very well informed, and a good resource for you to have as a consultation, as a consultant. Just make sure that we are going to send you guys the presentation, the video, and then we'll include the link to contact both Denise and Leslie. And if you want that checklist, when you go on their website, there is a contact form. Just fill that out and just put in there that you want that, grant readiness checklist, and they can get that sent to you. If you have any other questions, put them in the chat now. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Oh, City Year alum. Yay. I'm loving some City Year. Yeah, I've noticed your comments, Trice. Please reach out to me. I would love to talk with you. Absolutely. I was noticing your comment about finding sources to, I'm happy. I put some, Nisi put a link in, I put a link in. So there's some good starting points, but I'm happy to talk about it. I'm always happy to talk to a City Year alum. Awesome stuff. Thank you all. If there's anything we can do for us, do not be strangers. We're all in this together, trying to make our world a better place for all of us to live. So please feel free to touch base and we'll do what we can for you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
That being said, you guys have a good one. I'm going to sign us off. Please reach out and look for the recording later this evening.
Thanks, Nisi.
Of course.